Well, thank you for joining us today, and we promise you we will make it worth your valuable time. You're going to love this episode. I'm talking today to Jennie Potter, and we're going to be talking about negotiating past childhood trauma. And we all have some of it, some to a greater or lesser extent, but definitely we're staying tuned in. So welcome, Jennie. I can't wait for the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Cindy. This is such an amazing conversation to have and so powerful.
Yeah, and I think people don't talk about it enough, right? I mean, there's so much stigma around it that we tend to hold these things in. And I think the world would be a better place if we sort of having more conversations to naturalize the conversation. And for those of you who don't know Jennie, Jennie is a future self coach. I love that term, a future self. We can all aspire to be our best version of ourselves in the future, and particularly tailors for entrepreneurs. She's a trainer in the network marketing space. She's a published author. She's an inspirational speaker. She's got a bachelor's degree in psychology and also diploma in counseling. So she comes very well equipped and also certified as a John Maxwell coach. And she is obsessed with helping people identify and remove those hidden emotional blocks that hold us back from living our best lives. And that's why talking about it is so important. So why don't you jump right in, Jennie? Tell us about your book, Self-Sabotage No More, and what led you to write it?
Sure. So Self-Sabotage No More was born kind of for two reasons. One, I have a lot of experience in the self-sabotage department. If there was a choice and there was an obvious choice that was good and an obvious choice that was bad, I tended to pick the bad choice.
I
So
hear you.
there. And some past trauma as well that kind of, led to those choices. And then the other side was that even after my counseling diploma and my coaching certificates and working with people, what I noticed was that even if people knew what they wanted, even if they knew what to do to get what they wanted,
Yeah.
they weren't doing it. And so we would have these coaching calls, they'd be all excited, they get off the phone, and the next session, I'd say, "So how did it go?" And they'd say, "Well, I did the action for one day, but
Yeah.
then I stopped." And so why do we do this? Why do we head in the direction that we don't want to head, and we
Yeah.
know we don't want to head, but we go there anyway? So that's where it was born. The desire, I discovered a couple of things that seem to be common across the board for most
Yeah.
people, and tools that help you efficiently shift and get out of that sabotage loop,
Yeah.
get into heading in a direction that's more towards your best life and doing the things you want to do.
Oh, and so important because we're all guilty of that, right? And this is a beautiful matchup with it. A lot of people may go, huh, how is this negotiating? But, I always say that our negotiating our mindset is our first and most important negotiation. So why don't we kickstart by saying, like, what advice do you have for us on negotiating our mindset so that we can show up more powerfully to get what we want in life?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing I was reflecting on this is negotiation, thinking of it through that lens.
Yeah.
And one of the very first things I thought of was that most people are not aware, even in the personal growth
Yeah.
space, most people are not aware that their thoughts are a choice.
Yeah.
And so
So
we
true.
feel that thoughts are truth, or we give thoughts weight and make them beliefs, but they're just really programming.
Yeah.
So the first thing is just having that power around choosing what to think and what to say.
Yeah.
So I would say that's kind of the first key.
Yeah. And just before you go to the, I want to really put a pin in that for our listeners because I think it explains why people who have identical experiences, right? Whether you're not to be too dramatic, but even looking back, people who went through the Holocaust, you have some survivors who led very bitter lives, and you can certainly understand it. And yet other people coming out of that experience embrace every moment. So again, our reality is determined by our thoughts and the meaning that we choose to attach them. So that's such a powerful point. So sorry to cut you off there.
I actually just got goosebumps when you described that, because that's exactly the point. Yeah, and beautifully said. And even beautiful to use such an extreme example, because you're absolutely right. So that's one piece. Another piece that is kind of applicable to all people is that most of us before the age of 12, usually between the ages of 7 and 12, most psychologists will agree that we decide what we're capable of, what we're worthy of, the
Oh,
direction that we're headed, what money means. So if, you
Yeah.
know, maybe we lived in a household where our parents taught us that rich people are evil or they're
Yeah.
not happy. They might have money, but they probably aren't happy. And so, you know, there's lots of messaging we get. Children are to be seen and not heard,
Yeah.
like, you know, and so yeah, so a lot of that also what we decide when we're younger by either the well-meaning aunt that kind of programs
Yeah.
our autopilot, I call it,
Yeah.
or in the schoolyard, we create these definitions of who we are and then we live into them unwittingly for
Yeah.
years.
And sometimes it's people with the best. I'm glad you said about the ant, because sometimes it's the people with who have the best intentions and think they're doing right by us because they want to keep us safe. But what they do is end up making us believe we're not capable, right? Because they poo-poo big ideas we have that are really outside the box and try and steer us into another direction that's a safer course. And then we take from that typically as a child that, oh, then I guess that's not a possibility for me, or they don't believe that I can achieve it, or and then we really internalize that. So such an important point. It's funny when you said about baggage of money. Oh my gosh, as you were saying that, it hit because I grew up, you know, in a low rental apartment in a, you know, rent controlled neighborhood. So it was a bit of a tough neighborhood. Money was always an issue. And there was lots of dialogue about exploitation of, you know, by the rich as again. And, you know, as I went then driven, you know, striver, driver, achiever to get, and but when I became a lawyer, and I remember, you know, when I would practice, the first time I got like a really expensive, I got a Cadillac Escalade, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is so decadent. And I would pull up in front of the hearing, and if I saw my clients there, I would actually drive around to the back of the building because I was embarrassed about being seen in a caddy because it somehow made me one of them. So yeah, definitely loads of baggage. Now, you know, we often hear that if we want our life to change, we need to change. And I think for a lot of people, it's that how do we start? As you said, even with your coaching clients, they end up not, you know, at the beginning. So, what's the best way for people to kickstart that process if they recognize that they've been sabotaging? What do you suggest for that?
Yeah, so awareness is the first piece. So just even what we've just been talking about, that awareness, oh, I can choose my thoughts and like, oh, I wonder what destination I set when I was younger. You know, what do I believe I'm worthy of or
Yeah.
not worthy of? And then the other piece is emotion. So a lot of times, and this is really something that will speed up your growth. I wish I'd known about this 20 years ago because I went the long way. But so emotion and what I call unprocessed emotion can actually impede us from moving forward. It's often the reason why we sabotage. So the example you used about your vehicle is such a good one
Yeah.
because someone might even not buy that
Yeah.
vehicle. They don't know why. They have the money,
Yeah.
but they just can't bring themselves to buy the vehicle. And or you know they anyway it's a perfect example
Yeah.
because it's an example of like you not being able to stand fully in your power and in your truth because there's this embedded belief from when you were younger. Somebody said something and you connected, oh, you know, people with nice cars are this
Yes.
or and so what we can do is we can actually identify the emotion and then release it. And I know that sounds a little bizarre, but it's actually the emotions that
Yeah.
we repress or that don't get processed in the moment that are often the reasons why we sabotage.
Oh, so important. It's funny, as you said that, it struck me. I know Christian Michelson, who does a lot of personal development work for entrepreneurs as well. And he always says, you know, what is it? All of our fears are fear of feelings. And it's, when you think about it, it's so true because we repress those feelings so I think that's a beautiful advice that you give because the ripple effects of that are huge, right? Like not only was I embarrassed about the vehicle, but I recognized that for years I undercharged. And then I finally realized I am not serving myself or other people by being the Walmart of the legal industry, right? I mean, you know, people aren't going to value me if I don't value myself. So I think that's beautiful. And you, I know, do a lot of great work on self-sabotage. And since we sort of started talking about that, I think our, you know, autopilot, if you will, often I think is set to self-sabotage for some people. So why do you think that is? And what can we do about it, Jennie?
What we can do about it is become aware when we're sabotaging. So I always like to use the example of procrastination because most people are procrastinating about something.
That's true.
It's like that kind of you say tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes, whether it's around your health, your
Yeah.
finances, your taxes, something that you're procrastinating about. And so if you just think for a moment, what have I been procrastinating about, or what am I not doing? Like, why haven't I raised my prices?
Yeah.
Or, right? So having that thought, checking in and noticing, well, what do I feel when I think about raising my prices?
Yeah.
Like, because you'll make all the excuses like, well, I don't know how to do my website, or I don't know, I've got to talk to this person, I've got to change all the contracts. You'll make all the excuses. But what is the thing you're really procrastinating about? And then what's the emotion beneath that?
Yeah.
I actually have a method. It's called the alarm method, and it starts with awareness. It's an acronym. So the A
Yeah.
is for awareness. So become aware of the emotion. So if you just choose one thing that you're procrastinating about or you want to do but haven't done, and then notice the emotion you feel under that. So that would be the first
Yeah.
step. Yeah. So I can walk you through those steps, or,
Yeah, sure. Why don't we? What's that? Now you got piqued my curiosity about the LARM.
A is awareness, you choose the feeling, then L is location. And I say location because we know we're feeling something because we feel it somewhere in our body. So some people don't actually connect that. Some people are like, of course, I'm nervous if I feel it in my
Yeah.
chest or my knees or my stomach. But actually connecting with emotion is really powerful. So
Yeah.
understanding like, oh, there's that feeling in my chest. I'm anxious right now.
Yeah.
And so let's just pretend you're procrastinating about raising your prices,
Yeah.
and you feel that feeling in your chest. So now you know what's in your chest. So now you have location. We're going to go to the next step, which is ask the question. And the
Yeah.
question is,
And I'm going to just stop you for 1 sec before we do that, because I think you've hit on something really important. I know most people, when you talk about that location, they're like, they don't get what you're talking about. So I want to, for our listeners out there, and I challenge you to do this the next time when you're feeling angst about something or any strong emotion, just take some space for yourself to think, close your eyes and think, where am I feeling this in my body? And at first it's often like, well, I feel it everywhere. I don't know what you mean. But if you allow yourself to just be with it and feel it, there's going to be one spot in your body where you feel it most intensely, whether it's, in your head or in your chest or in your solar plexus or whatever. So just really tune into where you find it and be with it. So I just wanted to put, I think that's such an important point that you've raised. Great model so far, by the way, and wanted to make sure that our listeners really got that so they can practice this.
yes,
So, okay,
yes.
what was
So
the ask you were about to
this can
say?
feel like a weight on your shoulders as well, or like
Yeah.
a lot. I used to have a friend who said, "My butterflies are having babies." That butterfly stomach feeling. So yeah, absolutely. So just taking that moment and noticing. And thank you for clarifying that. And then the next step is asking the question. So the A is for ask. Ask the question, when have I felt this before?
Hmm.
So oftentimes you will zoom back to a memory of your mom making a comment about someone who drove a nice car,
Yeah.
or just a moment in time when maybe in basketball you didn't have the right shoes and everyone else had
Yeah.
it. Or yeah, something an aunt said like, oh honey, it's great to want to be an artist, but you better pick your plan,
Yeah.
your plan B, that's your plan B or whatever. And so just we have these memories, and those memories will give us a clue to where the original emotion that didn't process got stuck. Now, I want to clarify on that because we kind of jumped into the method, but an emotion is actually a vibration. So when you feel fear, how you know, like the reason you feel fear is your kidney pulses and your entire body recognizes that vibration as danger, fear.
Wow.
So if you want to step off the curb and there's a flash of movement, you'll jump back onto the sidewalk and feel that fear through your whole
Yeah.
body. It's a vibration.
Hmm.
And so emotions are vibrations. And so ideally, an emotion is like joy. You experience it and it just bubbles up and out.
Yeah.
And all emotions are meant to just guide us. Oh, there's a boundary. Oh, there's something sad. Oh, there's like, I need to step back. There's a safety issue. So emotions are a vibration. We feel them. That's why we feel them in a location. Our body releases chemicals. All this stuff happens. Yeah. So we ask the question, when have I felt this before? And whatever emotion didn't process in that moment, way back when, in that past trauma, in that experience, it rises up again to the surface.
Yeah. I
And
love
so,
that. I've never thought of that before, but I think that's a brilliant question to ask, right? To be making those associations. And as soon as you said it, it struck me when you're like about those pair of running shoes that you didn't have. And I'm dating myself here, but it used to be like either Adidas or North Stars were like the big Adidas were top. And we always had the no name brand, right? From Sears. So you totally struck a chord with me there. I get that. Okay. So we
yeah.
got the ALA. What comes next?
Oh, so then we're going to release the emotion. So the R is for release.
Yeah.
And how we do that, and actually you started by saying closing your eyes and noticing where you feel that in your body. So
Yeah.
with the release, we're really going to zone in on that area where you felt the emotion. So
Okay.
let's just pretend you felt it in your chest.
Yeah.
You'll zoom in on your chest, notice that. And then instead of resisting it, which is what we normally do
Yeah.
with emotions we don't like, you know, whatever we resist persists.
Yeah.
So instead of like holding on to it by accident, we're going to just relax that area and welcome whatever that feeling is.
Mhm.
Now, you know, I had years ago a counselor say to me, welcome the anger, Jenny. I had all this like repressed anger. I was like, when I was little, I was like, I'm never going to be angry. And so I had all of this anger pushed down. And so she said, welcome it. And literally I was like, I don't even know what you mean. I don't know what you
Yeah.
mean. I don't, how do you welcome? So what I discovered is when you can zoom in on the feeling, the physical feeling, and just relax that area
Yeah.
and welcome whatever that feeling is. Okay, just allow it. It will bubble up and out. I have an additional tool. I call it unpacking, where you can almost like you're wiping cobwebs off. There's a reason why this works, but we won't get into all the science
Yeah.
today. Clear from shoulder to wrist, shoulder to wrist, shoulder to wrist, with the intention that you're releasing that emotion.
Okay.
And that one works at the dinner table when your mom says something that triggers you, or someone, a sibling or something says something and you feel triggered. You can literally just clear that emotion in the moment
Yeah.
and allow it to move through you so that you can enjoy dinner.
Nice.
So that's the R, is relax, unpack, let it go.
Yeah.
And then the M, I like to replace that emotion with whatever you want, what you desire to feel. So if you would like to feel peaceful, you can pack in or just speak out, I am peaceful, I am peaceful, I am peaceful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
What a
that's
great model. And I mean, I gave the example about the money baggage because I picked up on it. And if I may, I know you've had some childhood trauma and you've been able to use your own models to help resolve some of that childhood trauma. Do you mind sharing just a bit so our listeners get a sense of the scope of the kind of problems that you can deal
for
with if you
sure.
set your mind to
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so when I was around 14, the kind of worst of the worst happened to me at a party. You know, a boy held me down, and in that moment, I was really a good girl. Okay, I'd self-labeled good
Yeah.
girl,
Yeah.
teacher's pet, all the things. And even if you haven't had trauma and you've just labeled yourself as the good girl,
Yeah.
there's some healing to happen there too. Let me just assure you.
That's true.
But I really, in that moment, that party that night changed me, and it changed my definition of self. I decided that I was unworthy, unlovable, dirty, not someone who anyone would ever want to marry or be with. And so, and then of course, I mean, it'll go one of two ways. Usually when that stuff happens, you'll either like never do a bad thing again and really like go within, or act out. And I went the way of the sabotage.
Yeah.
So I then started going to every party, being promiscuous, drinking heavily, drugs, all the things that, you know, sort of led me down a really uncomfortable path for a long time.
Yeah.
Those things, of course, then compact,
Yeah.
because then more self-definition, more I'm terrible, I'm bad, I'm dirty, I'm lovable, I'm unworthy of all the things.
Yeah.
And so by the time I was pretty much broken, you know, bottom of the, like, you know, I'd hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And someone had told me about affirmations to look in the mirror and say, I love myself, I'm worthy of love, I'm beautiful. Those were the three. Because at the time she had asked me, well, how do you self-define? What do you, and I was like, well, I'm ugly, I'm unlovable, I
Wow.
hated myself. And so she had me look in the mirror and say those three things. And I couldn't even look myself in the eye that first
Yeah.
time. It always makes me emotional
Yeah.
because it feels like a
You-
separate life now that I've
Yeah.
released the stuff and changed the direction. But at the time, I couldn't see my own worth, my own
Yeah.
beauty, my own light.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And look at
so,
you now. Oh, and thank you, frankly, for sharing. I think we often carry so much shame and see the dirty little secrets, whether it's about trauma in our life or mental health issues or addictions issues. And I love and I so appreciate you for being raw and real and vulnerable and sharing your story to help empower other people to be able to step into the best version of themselves, the best experience of their life to negotiate their best lives. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And
yeah, I mean, I always encourage people, like a lot of people have trauma, but some people say, well, there wasn't this big thing,
yeah,
but the
we
truth is we
minimize it.
all define ourselves along the way. Again, most of us before the age of 12, and then we keep living into that
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
again.
And
So
you
if there
touch on an important point there. It's what we minimize the trauma, right? Because we don't want to be, it's like chin up or, bear down and just power through it or what any of the number of other expressions we've been conditioned to. So I think that's great advice. And again, for our listeners out there, if you're sitting there going, well, I haven't really had one of those traumas, just don't minimize your experiences in life. I think that's great. Now you talk about sabotage filters, and that caught my interest. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What are sabotage filters and how can we change them?
Yeah, so we actually all have a reticular activating system, which is a fancy word for a filter. Essentially, we let in, our brain can let in certain things. So we're designed to always let in our name. This is why if you're in a crowd, you hear your
Uh,
name and you look, okay? But you don't hear other people's names, but you hear your
yeah,
own.
that's
We're
interesting.
programmed to hear our own name. We're programmed to hear a loud noise or something unusual
Yeah,
happening. This is a safety thing, a survival thing.
yeah,
We're programmed to notice if someone wants to get romantic with us.
yeah.
Uh,
That's
we'll
true.
let that in. And then the last thing is that we are programmed to let in whatever we focus on. So if we let in everything, it would be too much,
Yeah,
the color of the grass, the kids playing outside, the room, the temperature, the lights, the noise, all of the things, it would be too much. And so what happens is we only let in what we choose to let in. And
yeah.
the example that I like to use is I heard this actually with a TikTok, but I thought it was such a perfect example. This guy said he went to an interview and the interviewer said to him, how many red cars did you notice on the way to the interview? And he said, I don't know. I don't have no idea. The
Yeah.
interviewer said, if I had told you that I would give you $100 bill for every red car you saw, how many red cars would you have seen on the interview, on
Yeah.
the way to the interview? And the guy said, every single one.
Yeah.
And
So
so,
true.
right, so we can program in a moment what we let in, what we allow
Yeah.
in. And this goes from everything from being the person that declares that you can never find a good parking spot. If you're that person,
Yeah.
you'll never even see a good parking spot if it's
Exactly.
right in front of you
Yeah.
because your filter has been designed to only let in bad parking spots. And if you do find that good parking spot, you won't register, you won't collect it as
Yeah.
proof. We're
Yeah.
always collecting proof that we're right.
Yes.
So if you set your belief that I'm never included, you will
Yes.
never notice where you are included, and you'll always
Oh,
notice where
that
you're
is
not included.
such a game changer because our brains try to give us what they think we want. And so if we're always putting those negative things out there, I'm terrible at this, it's going to go looking for evidence of that. I love that you said that. I think it's such an important shift, right, in our perspective. Now, I know you talked too about, I think emotions are important because they play a big role in negotiations and they're often ignored, whether negotiating our mindset or beyond. But I know you talk about emotions getting stuck in processing and tell us what we can do about that when those emotions get stuck.
Yeah, so really, ideally, you would want to do, there's a couple of methods. I've written about them in my book. The simplest one is the alarm method. So just
Yeah.
having the awareness around the emotion and then unpacking it, like to
Yeah.
keep it succinct. But but you can use, there's methods like with muscle testing, you can identify what emotion. I created a scale where people can see how many unprocessed emotions they have.
Oh, wow. Yikes.
Really cool. Oh, the average adult only has around 250, which might sound like a lot, but I've worked with people that have a couple thousand,
Oh, wow. Wow,
people
that's
that have
awesome.
five. Like, so some people are just really good at processing.
Yeah.
And most of us, if you think about like, let's just say the average person in their 40s has around
Yeah.
250. Well, it's a lot of emotions they've gone through their
Yeah.
life to only have
Yeah.
250.
That's
How I
true. Yeah, that's true.
those 250 are lighting up. They're like, I say it's almost like sad songs or angry songs or anxious songs playing in the background. So
Yeah.
they're all playing quietly. And then something happens. This is what triggers are,
Yeah.
right? So someone says something and you suddenly feel so angry. The person beside you is not even mad, but you're so mad that that person said that thing. That's a unprocessed emotion.
Yeah.
And so whenever you get triggered, you can be aware like, ooh, there's something from my past that I didn't process that I need to now just notice. What am I feeling? Ask the question. When have I felt this before? Usually your
Yeah.
brain will take you back to that event. If it doesn't, it's okay, just go to the next step.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can do a lot of clearing and a lot of identifying of unprocessed emotions just with awareness. Yeah.
I can't wait to do your test. I confess I have not done that yet, but I'll be interested to see how many unprocessed ones I have. I think that's and I think for sadly, so many people go through their entire life never addressing them. So I love that you're giving us concrete stuff that we can do to help deal with those, resolve those. And you talked too about
Of set points would be where you, doesn't matter what job you work at, you always make around the same amount of money.
yeah.
Usually people have like a ceiling. So that would be
Oh, yeah.
right. So even if they make a bonus,
Yeah.
they end up like a big bill will come in or the car
Yes.
will break down or they have to pay off this thing. And so they still only made that amount of money that
Yes.
month. And so this would be a financial set point. People have like having it all set point. So if their marriage is really good, they can't their finances are a mess. If their finances are really good, they're fighting with their spouse. So we all have set points. Ideally, we all have a 10 out of 10 for having it all.
Yeah.
But your set points are this kind of subconscious boundary that you have set where that you're always trying to get back to balance. You're always trying to get to that set point. Example is our metabolism, because our metabolism, we have a metabolic set point. And so if you've ever lost 10 pounds, like taken 2 weeks to lose 10 pounds and then like one day later gained it back, miraculous design, your body is like, oh no, we've lost 10 pounds. We have to go back to our set point. So you want to
Absolutely.
reset your metabolic set point
Yeah.
so that it doesn't keep trying to gain that weight back. So that's a simple explanation of set
Oh,
points.
that totally resonates with me on so many levels. I could say, as you're saying, my brain's just, yeah. And it's why we keep repeating those same patterns, right? Because we go back to our factory setting, if you will.
Right.
So,
Right. Like we might have the belief that it's just not possible to be
yeah,
happy in a relationship.
yeah,
So anytime you're having happiness in your relationship, you will sabotage the
yeah,
relationship so that you're fighting again.
yeah.
You'll look for
Oh,
something. Yeah.
oh, I totally see that. And I see where I used to be guilty of that as well in some of those patterns. So
Mhm.
good. What's one of the most surprising things or shocking things that you discovered while you were researching your book? Anything stand out for you?
I would say for me, the biggest piece that I wanted to share with the world that I feel that everyone should know is the underlying emotions and beliefs driving the bus. I always say we think we're driving the bus. We're
True.
absolutely not driving the bus. So, well, we are, but our
Yeah.
subconscious is. And so learning how to, I would say one of the coolest things I've learned is that the simplest way to reprogram that subconscious that's actually steering
Yeah.
is when you're relaxed. So as you go to bed at night,
Yeah.
you can give your subconscious, while you're relaxed, while you're falling asleep, or when you first wake up in the morning, if you wake up calm, having that, just giving that subconscious some instruction. We're
Yeah.
powerful, we're beautiful, we're
Yeah.
successful. I'm having an amazing day today. Today will flow with ease. And as you sleep, you can even program your subconscious to heal you,
Yes.
release emotions and heal you while you sleep.
Yeah. Actually, I read a book about that. Like remarkable, extreme illnesses where people who had a profound belief would instruct their body while they were in that semi-conscious state, getting ready to sleep, to heal every cell, to regenerate and that. And so, and at first you're kind of like, but then it was like example after example, example after example where that came, because our mind is such a powerful thing and determines our reality. So, and I love that you go circling back to what you said at the beginning. It's about recognizing that as a choice, right? Choosing our thoughts, choosing the meaning we attach to those thoughts, choosing our reactions to things when they happen. It is a game changer.
Mhm.
Now, do you have any non-negotiable habits that you're committed to or that you would recommend?
Yeah, so
Daily non-negotiables?
yes, so I do fall asleep to affirmations and I say them in my mind.
Yeah.
And I actually go beyond I am, where I do I am, I feel, I choose, I
Mhm.
love. So I have a whole series
Yeah.
that I do as I fall asleep. And then in the morning, I picture the day going with ease, with flow. You know, if I have an interview like today, you know, I've already walked through like what we're gonna chat about, how it's gonna
Nice.
flow and give the best value. And so those are the two things for sure, falling asleep and waking. And then I also do things like while I'm getting ready, I speak out affirmations. I've done that for since I discovered them. Since that first day when I couldn't look myself in the eye, to now, which is like 16 years ago, to now while I'm getting ready, I really like shout out my affirmations and speak them out. And yeah, so those would be the two things that happen every day,
Yeah.
no matter what. And then
Beautiful.
other things flow in and out depending.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Such a powerful exercise. And I am grateful and I love that one of the things you did this morning was to anticipate that this interview would flow with lots of value because you have certainly given us tons of value here today. I can't believe how quick our time has passed. It's been such a fun conversation. I normally like to end by asking what's one of the greatest mindset shifts that you've ever had in your life? And again, it doesn't have to be on this topic at all, Jenny. It can be on, just any aha moment when you saw things differently or showed up differently.
Actually, it was a moment. I was just writing about this. I had a moment where I was in a really dark place, still in sabotage place.
Yeah.
You know, I had been hit by a car. I was crossing the street and a drunk driver hit me. I lived. I was, you know, I broke my foot, that's all.
Yeah.
But I had lost my job because at the time I was doing massage, so I couldn't
Oh,
work.
yeah.
I couldn't pay my rent. I was living on a friend's couch, renting out my place, super messy, had just like broken up with someone, single, alone, feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
I went for coffee with my friend who kind of on the outside looked like she had it all. She married her high school sweetheart. He was
Yeah.
lovely. She had a, you know, designer clothes when most of us were like thrift store shopping. She drove a nice car. And I just found out that from the accident, I was getting a settlement
Yeah.
and some money. And she looked at me and she shook her head and she said, "You're so lucky. Like, nothing lucky ever happens to me." And I had this moment, Cindy, where I was like, she doesn't think she's lucky and she
Yeah.
has it all.
Yeah.
And I saw in that moment, instead of saying to her, "Lucky, I'm not lucky," like,
I just got hit by a car.
but instead I looked at it and I saw it for what it was. And it was like this big kind of, I felt this pay attention moment where I realized that everything is perspective
Yes.
and that I needed to be grateful that I had a couch to sleep on,
Yeah.
that nothing, you know, that I didn't get hurt more
Yeah.
by that car, that
Yeah.
I was getting a settlement, that I had friends, you know, and just sometimes when we're in a dark place, it's harder to find the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that I would say was the biggest, one of the biggest transformations for me was seeing that it really is all about our perspective and we choose our
Yeah.
perspective.
Oh, that's a huge aha mindset. Aha, absolutely. And again, for our listeners out there, I think what a beautiful note to end on, because anytime that you're feeling yourself in a dark place or a place where you feel that you're unlucky or you're not summoning up the gratitude, just choose to shift your perspective, right? Just flip the story that you're telling yourself in that moment. It's that's a beautiful insight. So where can people learn more about you, Jennie?
So you can go to jenniepotter.com, and it's JenniePotter.com. And there's free resources there and downloads and more about me. So that's the
Beautiful.
simplest place.
Great. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes as well, everybody, so that you can go take advantage of these resources. When there are resources available that can up-level your life, I strongly encourage you to take a moment to grab them. So thanks so much for being here and sharing all these insights with us, Jennie. You've given us loads of value today. So your affirmation certainly worked in this regard today, and really appreciate you for sharing not only your story, but some practical, concrete steps that our listeners can take away to make their lives better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Cindy. I appreciate it. And I just thank you for everything you do to help people up level.
Oh, and likewise, likewise. And for our listeners, I have no doubt there is loads of value here from this episode. If you haven't found it, then listen again because you were not paying attention. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done that. And as always, give the gift of sharing. These kind of messages can make such a difference in the lives of the people that you care about. So make sure to share this episode with them. And who can't benefit from getting rid of that self-saboteur? And before we sign off today, just want to share, as always, some ways that we can work together. If you're looking for ways to up-level your negotiation skills so you can negotiate your best life, because all of life is a negotiation, I've got everything from online to group to my signature VIP and mastermind experiences. It'll help you better leverage your natural power. And yes, you have it, so that you can get more of what you want and deserve in life while also helping to lift those around you. And if that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And for heaven's sakes, if you haven't grabbed my book yet, please do that, The Art of Feminine Negotiation. And that is a wrap for this episode. So until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you can stop missing out and start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care, everyone.